here at the University of Michigan. Katerina received her BA in biology and PhD in zoology from the University of Pennsylvania. She did postdoctoral work in marine biology at the University of Miami and then came to the University of Michigan to research neurobiology and psychobiology. If you were in her presentation earlier today, you already have a sense of the breadth of biology that's in her background. In 1977, our own Professor Vic Catch told Katerina about a faculty position that the department chair, Dee Ellington, had recently posted, and the rest, as they say, is history. Katerina's 40-year tenure as a professor in the School of Kinesiology has been marked by important research in exercise endocrinology, which she has explained to us just a few minutes ago. Amid all that work, she somehow found the time to do a lot of other things too. She has reviewed scholarly journal articles for more than 30 journals, contributed to 4 professional societies, published over 100 journal articles, books, 2 book chapters, and 2 books, which I have got to say are 2 of my favorite all-time books in exercise physiology because of her unique ability to integrate so much information. And when I first saw her advanced exercise endocrinology book, I said, I don't think there's anyone else that could have written this book. It's almost like the Guyton of old times of exercise endocrinology because of her ability to bring all these different organ systems together in one book. She has served on 24 committees across the university, multiple tours of duty as the Associate Director for Research, the Chair of the Movement Science Program. But Katerina also has had a really strong commitment to teaching as part of an integral part of research, and as such, she has mentored more than a dozen master's and PhD students, taught hundreds of undergraduate and graduate students in her class, and as we were talking to students, we found a great quote from one of her former students who said, I think this sums it up perfectly. Dr. Boer's classes are definitely not blow-offs. I think that's quite a compliment. She will push you. However, if you have any interest in research or analysis, take one of her courses. In the field of exercise science research, you won't find anyone better. I know I speak for our faculty, our staff, and our students when I say that we'll miss Katerina's deep commitment to her research and students. Katerina, we wish you well, happiness in your retirement and whatever new adventures may lay before you. Since you'll be having your office in OBL, I might even see more of you now because we'll be in the same building. And thank you for everything you've done for our university and our school. And I now like to introduce Dee Eddington, Professor Emeritus and former Chair of the Department of Kinesiology.
Thanks, Roger. Well, I've known Katerina since she was a baby as a faculty member. She did a lot of postdoc work and a lot of experiments around, and she did move a lot, as she mentioned. But in my mind, she's the ultimate faculty member in the way that she approaches the faculty role. Some of the things that Lori mentioned in terms of research, she has over 244 articles, publications, and books put together. And that's a good thing. I tell people if they want to come to Michigan and you like Michigan, then don't teach very much. If you will come to Michigan and you want to do research, then that's fine. But you'll never get tenure at Michigan teaching. And that's pretty hard for some people to believe, but that's the way it is. And that's the way Michigan's grown, and it will continue to grow that way. No one will say that outside of me. Pay attention if you don't have tenure. And also, Katerina never came to work to get tenure. Tenure is something you get on the way to a grade. It's not an endpoint. It's an intermediate endpoint. If you're working to get tenure, then you probably should change your mind and go someplace else, because you need to work for a good career is what you're looking for. So research was fine. In terms of teaching, as I look at her resume, she taught 14 different classes. Nobody should do that in Michigan. Teach 14 different classes. And the PhD master students as well, 15 total. And in service, she was excellent in service as well. She had 8 kinesiology committees and 15 university committees. Now that, she talks about balance. I would never tell anyone to be balanced. How can you be balanced and do all those things and still do the research that Katerina did? So that's why I would say that she's the protege of an excellent faculty member, and a faculty member that would all be like to be associated with. And I'd like for her to be a role model for young people coming up. I don't do jokes. I'm leaving that to the Cat, since Cat is going to come up next, and he's the one who's going to be making you laugh. Vic?
That's a good setup. So I wrote some notes a couple of days ago about what I wanted to say, and this morning I read it to my wife, wanting to make sure I wasn't my usual fool. She sort of judges these things for me, and I came to realize that this was really the end of an era here in kinesiology. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that. But before I do, I want to first publicly say a couple of words about Dee Eddington before I talk about some things about Katerina. We all, in this family of kinesiology, owe a debt of gratitude to Dee. In the early 1980s, Kines was under review for either elimination or major cuts as part of the university's response to a major financial crisis. It was Dee who engineered our survival as an academic unit. He negotiated the only budget increase that we saw at that time. We created the sports management unit at that time, and we finally gained recognition of kinesiology as independent from athletics and education. So I think we all owe Dee a real amount of gratitude for what he did for us, or we wouldn't be here. So thanks, Dee. So I came here in 1972 when there were only 3 of our 20 full-time faculty members who were engaged in research. A few years later, I and a few of my graduate students, and I think Katerina may remember this, we're doing some research on eating and exercise. And I needed to learn how to do some brain lesions in rats because we were trying to manipulate their feeding behavior. The only person on campus who was doing that at the time was a young neuroscientist who was working in the basement of the old neuroscience building, which I believe was right at this site here, or right here. She was in the basement. I had met Katerina at a party, as she said, because we were involved with some mutual friends who were sailors, and we sailed a few times. I went to see Dr. Valenstein, the director of the lab at the time, and he encouraged me to speak with Katerina, who was a postdoc. Wow, in a few days, perhaps it was a couple of weeks, I discovered a closet exercise physiologist. Her work just enthralled me. At this time, Dee had appointed me as chair of a search committee to find a new faculty person, preferably a senior scientist, because we had none. We were actually quite thin in research prowess. We were mostly a physical education teaching unit. After several interviews with senior faculty, Dee decided to grow our talent ourselves. And therefore, we set out to hire 2 or 3 assistant professors, all at the price of 1 full professor. I immediately at that time went to Katerina and told her, "You've got to apply for this job. This is just made for you." And she responded, quote, "I'm a biologist." And I said, "But you could be an exercise physiologist." She never had heard that term before. Well, shortly thereafter, we hired Katerina along with 2 other young research assistant professors. These hires permanently changed the trajectory of this department, of this unit, forever. Katerina moved to our unit and started working. In a semester or so, she was humming away with activity in her laboratory. At this point, Katerina was beginning to publish some of her most important papers about some of the discoveries. It was exhilarating, to say the least, to share ideas and discuss research with Katerina. Katerina's research is really a testament to rigor and simplicity. Her experiments are examples of how to properly frame research questions, to clearly support or exclude theoretically sound hypotheses. This is not an easy task, as many of us who have struggled to do so have found out. Katerina is the embodiment of a theoretical scientist, which we all strive for, but seldom achieve. Throughout her research career, Katerina strived to know how things work. This can be quite involved and necessitates a keen understanding of mechanisms of cause and effect. Katerina's research always demonstrated clear progression. One experiment followed another experiment. This leads to understanding of how things work, rather just than an accumulation of more unrelated facts. In dissertation committee meetings, Katerina always asked the important questions, getting to the meat of the matter post haste. I always insisted that all of my students include Katerina on their committee, whether they wanted to or not, because I knew she would always insist on excellence and not let anything mediocre pass. I was always assured that Katerina would make our students better scientists because of her insistence on doing things the proper way. Getting students involved in research was always one of Katerina's passions. She was insistent on having undergraduate students, mind you, undergraduate students in her lab working alongside graduate students. She was the first in our unit to employ undergraduate students with grant money and undergrad and grad students from other units to come to our department and participate with us. This was really huge in spreading the word about kinesiology to the rest of the university. We no longer were necessarily just cloistered. Katerina always demonstrated tremendous energy and dedication. It was typical to find her in the lab on weekends or evenings, taking care of her hamsters and teaching students how to do certain lab procedures or design experiments. We would often chat about this sometimes wonder in my retirement now why I was there on weekends and nights. And we chat about how to do research. On one occasion, she even asked for my help. And I thought, oh, I need it. Well, she asked me to find one of the hamsters that had gotten out and was running around the bottom of the CCRB and I think got into the heating duct. And the little guy was never found. We still think he's there. But this became the source for many jokes and aside comments that we all enjoyed immensely. Finally, I want to comment on something that I hold very dear. In all my dealing with Katerina over 40-some years, 43 years that I was employed here, I found her to be a fierce and consistent champion of openness, fairness, transparency, and truth. Now, this is something exceptional at a university, and often quite challenging when it expresses in department meetings, executive committee meetings, and even in dissertation committees. Katerina and I had many disagreements. We had robust arguments and vigorous debates, but we always walked away friendly and with appreciation of each other's ideas. I miss and cherish that. And I hope that all of you young people someday find colleagues and other individuals that you can share such an invigorating and meaningful relationship with a colleague. Katerina is a humanist and just that kind of special person that has left the Academy in a better place. So thank you, Katerina, for the privilege of your association. Thank you. So it's my pleasure to introduce Liz. Now, I saw Liz running around all the time. I never knew what her last name was until I saw it on the piece of paper here.
What is
Yeah, well, it's Liz. It's that Liz is there again. She's doing this work, and it seems to be really exciting. And it was. And so, Liz, you can come up and say a few words.
Thanks. I don't know how to follow that because that was pretty remarkable. Thanks for having me here. I am here to acknowledge all of the accomplishments of my mentor, Dr. Katerina Bohr. She dedicated 40 years of her life to the University of Michigan, the school, division, department of kinesiology, physical education, and all those iterations, but also to her colleagues, her students, and her mentees. During the time that she was here, she has influenced so many students, imparted knowledge that they may not have acquired had they not attended her classes, worked in her lab, or sat down during her office hours to discuss a topic that they didn't understand. I always hope that my students would do the same thing and come in and have these questions and interesting conversations with me, because it really made a huge difference for me in my iteration and career. I came to the University of Michigan 18 years ago, which blows my mind. This wasn't here. I was telling my husband, this was the library. We went in over there, and it's amazing. I was a chronologically challenged student who wanted to get a PhD. The mentor I had originally chosen was leaving, and I needed to find a new one. I asked Katerina if she would take me on, and thankfully she said yes. And that changed my life. I was not the ideal student when I arrived. I was much older than the average bear. And I came from a smaller university that was not known for research. And so that was, I was trying to bring lots of enthusiasm. I was really good at teaching, and I also dragged my husband and 2 children along with me at that time. I am so thankful that Katerina did take a chance on me because it really paid off for me in the end. It kick-started my interest in research. I would have never thought that, and just all of the things that happened in the lab and the knowledge that I gained from doing all the research that I did with Katerina was really very, very beneficial for me and hopefully mutually beneficial for her as well. I do have to say it was sometimes frightening going into Katerina's office, but each and every time I came out of there knowing much more than when I went in. There were a lot of red pieces of paper, I can tell you that, after I would leave. But one of the things that was so helpful to me was that it challenged me. It challenged me to start thinking more critically about what it was I was actually writing, what was I thinking, and what was the next direction that we were going to go with our research. So that was an extremely important part of my development. These demanding sessions with Katerina were invaluable, sometimes frustrating, but extremely important to me as a researcher, as a teacher, and how I thought about concepts, how I approached them, and ultimately what happened with my career. She made a huge difference for me in setting me on the path that I ultimately chose. She pushed me to submit my work, to present at national and international conferences, to go to these meetings, to stand up in front of other people, and she always told me, don't talk with your hands, because I have a tendency to do that. And so that helped me. It helped me to think about what is it that I'm presenting and how I'm presenting it to other researchers. The other thing that was really great about going to these meetings with Katerina was then meeting back up at the end and having conversations. What did you hear at that talk? What did you see on that poster? What are these things that are going to help us move forward with our research area? One of the biggest takeaways that I have from my time with Katerina was something that she didn't talk directly to me about, but it's something that she modeled each and every day. She represented women in science, which is a tough gig to break into, especially over the course of the years. It's gotten easier, but she showed that by working hard and by not giving up, you can accomplish what you set out to do. That was very significant for me. And knowing that you can do whatever it is that you want to do. It's interesting in reflecting back upon my time with Katerina, in addition to her sharing all her knowledge with me, she was also very warm and welcoming to my children. My 2 older children, Stefan and Sienna, have fond memories of blueberry picking with Katerina, going to her house, and of course coming into the lab to see what was going on there. Subsequently, both Stefan and Sienna worked in my lab during their undergraduate years and were expert pipetters, the best I've ever seen. All of this was because of Katerina's lab. My youngest, Guinevere, was born in the middle of my PhD, which is not ideal by any means, but Katerina took it in stride and supported me throughout. Katerina is also a wonderful artist, and I hope if you haven't seen her work that you can check it out. She's marvelous. I would like to leave you with 2 quotes that reflect what Katerina meant to me. The first one is by John Steinbeck. I have come to believe that a great teacher is a great artist, and that there are as few as there are as any other great artists. Teaching might even be the greatest of the arts, since the medium is the human mind and spirit. And so, when we talk about teaching, it doesn't necessarily mean just standing up in the classroom, but also teaching happens wherever you are. It can happen in your laboratory. It can happen right here in this beautiful atrium. The second is by Carl Jung. One looks back with appreciation to the brilliant teachers, but with gratitude to those who touch our human feelings. The curriculum is so much necessary raw material, but warmth is the vital element for the growing plant and for the soul of the child, or as in this case, an adult. Thank you.
Well, I wanted to give a great thank you to our speakers, and one of the things I realized while sitting there listening to them is that we're standing in the shadows of some of the great exercise scientists and the legacy of the school and the founders of the school and our senior faculty who have made it really great. We also have our junior and our mid-career faculty here who are the next giants of exercise science, and this is a really special place to be. And with that, I would like to have Katerina come up. We have a bit of a gift for her. Our great staff found volume 2, number 2 issue of Movement magazine from the fall of 1989. And we have a movie-sized poster of Katerina who was featured on the cover, and she looks just still exactly like that.